The idea that if you really purify your energy body, then it's almost like you're having like a Tesla to drive your way to enlightenment. Which of course, if you really wanted to, you could walk there. But why walk when you could like take a really fancy car?
A smooth ride.
Action!
Welcome to the Spirit of Yoga, a very special episode today in which we welcome one of my dear friends and most heroic students and graduates. Nithya Priyan from Singapore is in the house. He actually just concluded teaching the on-site part of his own yoga teacher training here in Bali, and we used the occasion to sit together to connect from heart to heart and in a way share with you the beauty of the path of a yoga and meditation teacher. Because Nithya Priyan is a hero in this path and is, to me, not a student, but actually a teacher. A profound inspiration how this journey can be taken to the next level. And he joined our teacher training, actually one of the first editions, some 11 years ago on a small island in Thailand. He showed up. And he was already a master in meditation, had done like 3-5 vipasana, 10-day silent meditation, mindfulness retreats by the time he showed up. He was not yet good on the asana practice, where he was more or less a beginner who literally like struggled to touch his shins, kind of.
Yeah.
Like it was like no, knees, okay, but toes completely out of reach. Just I don't know, like a year and a half after our teacher training, he was a master asana practitioner and soon after opened his own yoga studio in downtown Singapore, in Chinatown, at the heart of the city, of the cultures where they come together, opposite of the Indian temple and the mosque, next to the Buddhist temple and the Methodist church, in the heart of Singapore, opening a studio where rents are skyrocketing high. And he's still running, not by now one studio, but 2 studios in Singapore a decade later, hosting his own 200-hour teacher trainings, his own 300-hour advanced teacher trainings, and is just a whole master of asana practice, meditation. And I'm so thankful that we're here together. Thank you for showing up, making the time on your trip. So grateful for being connected to your heart. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Burkhard, and thank you for, as always, your embarrassing introductions.
But it's all true. I didn't even exaggerate anything. It's even just the basics of summarizing what happened to you over the last dozen years. So maybe we can even literally take it chronologically and see how you came from a more business Singaporean work career lifestyle, first of all, towards the Buddhist insight meditation known as vipasana, and did these very intense, very strict Buddhist vipasana meditation retreats, 10-day silence of sitting from morning to night in meditation, how you came from the career life into that, and then onto yoga. I'm curious how you got started on the path to make it more relatable for people to see like, wow, I can also make that first step, have the trust to step into a new life. How did that begin for you?
So that was in 2008 when I was super confused about what my next steps were going to be. I remember that back then I was in a really depressed state. I had just left my job. Back then I was a computer like programmer of sorts, just freelancing, and then I think I did a little bit of architecture as well because I studied to be an architect, and I did a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and nothing really clicked for me. So just that I felt that I wasn't very grounded, didn't really find what I was supposed to be doing in life, and then, of course, not even knowing if that's a valid question to ask. Nobody else around me asked that question, right?
Sure.
Everyone is just putting their head down and just moving forward.
Go strong.
Yeah.
Hustle culture.
And so actually, as I found myself out of a job, after a while, of my own choosing, of my own device, but then being stuck in between the jobs, not knowing what the next step is going to be. It's not a very nice place to be, and to stay there for like months, just as a Singaporean, that's not really a nice place to be.
Yeah,
And
because there's
so-
the expectation of performing and this straight, no, the CV just needs to be without any breaks and being committed clean on that commitment.
Oh yeah, and then you have your classmates, they're moving on ahead with their
Uh-huh.
life, they're moving forward, and you just feel so left behind.
Competition.
Yes.
Sure.
And then in the midst of all that, and then you ask me, what did I do? Actually, now that I look back, I don't think I did anything except just sit and be depressed all the time. So I think in our community, we have this term which is called grace, yeah?
Yes.
That is if, despite, and you are totally undeserving of it, something just happens and then just decides that, it's your time to lift you up. And so I think my moment of grace was that I was watching YouTube one night and I was listening to this person in India. He's talking about spirituality, meditation, things that I have previously, probably heard about in parties and stuff like that, chakras, energy centers, prana and stuff like that. But it didn't really go deep into me except that particular moment. I'm not sure why. Something just suddenly clicked. And then ever since then, the weeks following, and I'm watching video after video, and I'm literally trying to apply whatever I learned sitting in my own bedroom on the floor, trying to, close the eyes, meditate, and then finding that I cannot keep my eyes closed for more than 1 minute before I have to get up and do something, It's
That's how it goes in the beginning of meditation. Exactly.
amazingly ridiculous.
Sure. 1 minute is impossible to sit still without moving for a minute.
Yes.
It's surprisingly challenging in the beginning. Not to mention even to count the breath till 7. Like I cannot even count 3 breaths in a row as a beginner meditator. So exactly, people who started meditation have experienced that and frequently got frustrated. So how did you not run away and get frustrated?
I think I just really, 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 really wanted to make this work. And once again, I think it's by grace that I've started to listen, and one day decided to really listen to the point where it becomes almost very certain to me without a doubt that there must be something behind what then teachers like this particular teacher in YouTube was trying to say to everyone. And that even if I fail, then, for once in my life, suddenly it's not someone else's fault. It's not the fault of this tradition or this practice. And so because it wasn't somebody else's fault this time round, then it's not anything to do with me walking away and finding the next form of entertainment. But instead, it was just a matter of me sitting down and just trying to go past myself. And then in the weeks followed, what happened was absolutely nothing. I don't make any progress still. And so actually that really pushed me to then go to India and starting my journey there. So that was the start of my, I think, half a year that I was in India. And it wasn't
You
an
stayed
easy
half a
journey.
year in India?
I think, no, it was about maybe 5 months
5
or
months?
so.
I didn't know. I didn't know even about that. Interesting.
And it was probably the worst way of going to India is when you have not really a lot of budget because, you have dwindling funds because you're out of a job.
Sure.
And so you have to get the bottom level of accommodation.
Sure.
And then you
Can be
have to
so
take,
challenging, yeah.
yes, super challenging, the most public of the public transport.
Sure, especially in the contrast to Singapore, because in Singapore everything is so clean, so organized, so structured, so perfect, and India is a mess and it's filthy dirty. So it must have been quite a challenge, even like a culture shock for you.
It was a super shock.
Yeah, I imagine.
The first day, and same thing. Like you would expect that probably I would turn back,
Run away.
big
Sure.
mistake, run away, and
Sure.
and stuff like that. But then I pushed forward.
Wow.
Yeah. Back then there was no Google Maps.
Yeah,
So I
sure.
was always lost. There was, guidebook, but guidebooks are like 1 or 2 years
Yeah,
outdated.
sure.
And then you would be asking locals for directions. And they would be,
They don't even know. They would be just like, because they don't want to say I don't know. They would be just like, yeah, I think it's this direction.
Yes.
But maybe it was the other.
See, they are like maybe the equivalent of ChatGPT, the way it is nowadays.
Hallucinating.
Yes, and you don't know whether they know or they don't know whether they know or don't know, and they just have this random movement of the head and then pointing in another direction.
It's
And
true.
sometimes it seems as if they're coordinating with the next person who is going to point exactly in the opposite direction.
It's
And
like,
you're like that.
where to go? Where to go?
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah, that's how it goes. But then in what India teaches us then is you're already here.
Mm.
So we try to always get somewhere in our linear progress mindset, reaching something, achievements, advancements, competitive culture, as you described it. But India has this, in a way, grace that it puts you where you're supposed to be and confront you head on and throw you out of your comfort zone in any case.
I was thrown out of my comfort zone.
Definitely. And it's like a reset because that's also what you describe. Life didn't really make sense anymore. Your previous goals, ambitions didn't really work out. Some depressive state, some dead ends, nowhere to go, stuck. And then the need for a reset, being open, being available, searching, seeking, and being open to some new inspiration coming. So this availability is in a way the key to then also be open to what you called grace, to this life getting supportive. The possibility that the universe somehow opens a new door unexpectedly. So how did that continue for you apart from that Indian journey that you then took it to the next level and got more serious about the path? Like 5 months India, that's already a lot. Maybe you can share some other anecdote, eye-opening, heart-opening experience there. But how did you get then to this strict Buddhist meditation practice as a next step? How did that continue?
It was during the end of my trip in India.
You took the Vipassana retreat there in India?
Yeah, Igatpuri,
Goenka Vipassana style?
Goenka Ji, and probably the not the optimal place if it's going to be your first yoga retreat, 9-day Vipassana retreat, because it can be a bit challenging to do it in India.
Sure.
Like the participants, the locals there, they tend to be a little bit not so serious about the vows that they're supposed to take. So, in a Vipassana retreat, we're supposed to not say anything.
No
But that's
speaking.
not necessarily going to be the case in a Vipassana retreat in India. Okay. And normally we take a little bit of care about being quiet when we meditate, especially if there are people around you. And at least specifically for my retreat, again, they were not too very strict about that, amongst each other. And so if you are, beginning meditation and you get so sensitized to all those small little distractions, because of so much agitation inside of you.
Then agitation inside and then agitation around doesn't make it easier in the beginning.
Yes. And so it was actually initially extremely challenging, those 9 days. Which of course, in the Vipassana 9-day retreats, you also have the guidance of a teacher. They call them assistant teachers, which you can meet maybe once or twice a day. And they will check in with you just to see how your practice is going. So very naturally, I would always be complaining to the teacher, please, can you switch my seat? The person next to me, this is intolerable. If only I can have a nice quiet place and then everything will be okay. And he would never. And he would say, and I remember the words that he said to me that made me so triggered. I was really, really mad at him. He said, oh, actually, it's not them, it's you.
No, they are noisy. They disturb me.
Got red in the face.
Exactly. The mind's answer would be, if only.
Yes.
If only they would be more quiet, then I could go deeper in meditation. If only the conditions would be better. I remember I went to a Goenka Vipassana retreat, and there's a pig barn directly next to the meditation hall.
Okay.
Like of swine, of like pork production.
Okay.
And they just had piglets, small pigs. And then they are screaming for the mother to make their way to the tit for the milk for the drinking. And they scream like as if they are getting slaughtered.
Yeah.
They're like,
wow.
And this like the whole retreat.
Mm-hmm.
If only the pigs would be quiet, then I could go deeper in meditation. It can be big things like this,
Yeah.
or the tiniest small things. If only the food would be better, if only it wouldn't be so hot, if only this or that, then I could go deeper.
Yeah.
The mind. And then we meet the mind and its complaining tendencies.
Yes. And its tendency to project blame
Yes.
on other people
Exactly.
and to be so misguided by that. Yeah.
Maybe we can pick up there for a moment the topic, the theme of this month in our sharings, gratitude. How did you manage to turn that around across your life's yogic journey, to turn that complaining, outside projecting, pointing fingers attitude? Did you find ever a way how to turn that into gratitude? Because this is what the masters would occasionally recommend. Be thankful for the challenge, because we can grow with every challenge.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an opportunity, an invitation to practice more detachment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so thankful for that difficulty. How did that ever turn around in your path, if at all?
I think in the years that followed, I have more and more deeper and deeper realization over one of the limbs of the Ashtanga, which is number 5, which is pratyahara.
On the
Which is-
eightfold path,
Yes.
8 limbs of yoga by Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, the yama niyama, virtues and ethics, asana, the posture practice, then the pranayama, the breath work, bringing the energies into flow, and then you're referring to the 5th one, pratyahara, the internalization. The metaphor is the turtle pulling its limbs within, withdrawing, sensual withdrawal, internalization. How does that relate to gratitude?
Because initially, as with many other people, we always think pratyahara is about, it's a little bit about the analogy of those monkeys that will cover the eyes, cover the ears, cover the mouth, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, and then have no fun. And that's when we say turning the attention inwards,
Yes.
right? And we literally have a mudra that is just like that,
Yeah.
don't we?
Sanmukhi mudra.
Shanmukhi mudra,
Yeah.
which is the closing of your 6 gates,
Yeah.
which is literally recreating what those monkeys are doing.
But all at once, not 3 pictures, but all at once. Use all your fingers to plug all the holes. Exactly, yeah.
So as a kind of prerequisite towards the inner rungs
Yeah.
of the 8 limbs,
True.
or as a kind of a turning point from the outside external practices to the internal practices, and like a kind of prerequisite for that.
True.
And so,
Maybe I can briefly just explain there. The 5 first limbs, which we
Yes.
just mentioned, are the outer limbs, and the last 3 additional limbs are the inner limbs, the Bahya Anga, Anta Anga. So the last 3 are concentration, meditation, and samadhi. So we go really deeper inside, internalize in that introspection, interoception, concentration, meditation, and then the altered states of consciousness, the universal awareness of samadhi, that requires turning around, our usual attention going outward, and then we close the sense gates and internalize, as a preparation in a way to go in,
yes, and then you just did it. You so beautifully used the word introspection along as a synonym for pratyahara, right?
Yes.
Whereas for me, all this while, I understood pratyahara to be wear some earplugs, put a blindfold on, go to a quiet place, and then just block everything out and then try to just meditate.
Sure.
So that's such a different, initially such a different idea, such a big misunderstanding of what pratyahara is supposed to be.
Exactly, because it's not an inhibition in the sense of blocking, plugging the ears or blocking the eyes, but it's actually about the turning around of our awareness.
Yes.
With a famous saying, where the mind goes, the energy flows. And usually we externalize all the noise around, and then we point the fingers in this projection. Oh, you're so noisy, and if only you would be quiet, then I could meditate. But that's an externalizing. But if we see actually the projection, always when we point the finger at somebody, there's at least 3 fingers pointing back at ourselves,
Yes.
as an invitation, as a reminder. No, look within. Don't
Yeah.
externalize, but internalize. And then we don't need to plug it. It's just our intention where we are looking, where we are blaming, or at least where we are maybe even finding the beneficial aspects.
Yeah.
So internalizing, sensual withdrawal, not sensual inhibition, blocking. An important nuance, which in the beginning on the path we don't really understand, but we sometimes need to learn the hard way with such lessons.
Yes, that was what the assistant teacher was trying to tell me. So hard,
Yes,
but
yes.
of course, if I'm not ready, I'm just going to get really mad at him. So, but yeah, I trusted the process. Though I lasted a few more days, and then yeah, something magical happened. This real understanding of pratyahara that there are all these things going on outside, but then just as important as being fixated on all the objects
Yes,
of your perception,
yes.
but then also important to know about the subject, the one that is witnessing the objects. And this thing was not something that I just sat down and worked out like mathematics, but it's just something that literally just lands on you just like that one day, and then boom, almost like such a gigantic release of energy, and then all of a sudden, one moment, still still being obsessed with all the people around me, and then another moment, they are still around me.
Yeah.
They are all still around me. I'm still hearing the same sounds, but then everything having a different meaning, different quality to it, just like that. And then once again, if I cannot really take any credit for any of this, only all I did was just to try and fail. And, the only thing I succeeded was to fail. And so really it's
That's a quote. The only thing I succeeded in is to fail.
yeah, things happened in spite of me, not because of me, And then, as you say, there's nothing but gratitude. Once you understand this, it wasn't really you. All you did was just fail, and then this grace happens, and all of a sudden, that which is always turning outwards and always projecting suddenly becomes the one that turns inwards, and sudden realization.
Yeah.
And without that, I would still be today trying to find a quieter and quieter place to meditate.
Yeah.
Right?
So that failing is an interesting one. The confrontation, in a way, hitting our head against the wall, trying in the kind of common beaten path, the mainstream track. But then we notice more and more that we try in the wrong places, in the wrong ways, because we are so conditioned, habituated in this projecting outward, pointing fingers, blaming others, etc., that it can take some time to notice that there's even like anything limited in that. So we need to hit our head against the wall a few times to really get the point, sometimes even a lot. But then the invitation, they even have it also actually in Silicon Valley, in the startup culture, fail fast. Because then you have a possibility to learn and try better the next time. So in Silicon Valley, briefly, on the other side of the world, kind of, you're not to be taken serious as a startup founder if you don't have at least 1 to 3 failed businesses under your belt, because you didn't learn your lessons yet. So fail fast and kind of fall forward, rise forward, and grow up, brush it off and shake it up, and then move forward. And then, as you describe, if we allow that process, if we trust in that, if we receive the feedback, in this case from the assistant teacher supporting you with advice, from your own trust, from the grace, somehow life gets supportive, then the insights just appear. And as you described so eloquently, we cannot even take credit for it. It's just happening to us. We just become more available. We relax, we detach and soften. And in that surrender, ultimately, then it happens to us. The insight flashes forth. And this is, in a way, also how the Vipassana meditation is described. It's a Buddhist insight meditation. Not inside, outside, but inside, like sight, seeing. It's a wisdom, a flashing forth of wisdom, which happens to us if we create the proper conditions of keeping the body stable in a pose, observing the breath, and just being available to go deeper. And then you, even towards the end of your first retreat, you already had that flashing forth of wisdom, which for me took like 3-5 retreats of having to sit through all the agony and negativity. So inspiring that even in the first retreat already you had some opening and some deeper insight, wisdom flesh, which then, of course, gives us trust, gives us hope that there is something beyond. It's just like agony inside, agony outside.
Yeah.
So maybe you can share a bit more how the journey continued after that first retreat from you. How did you then so quickly pick up the thread and go deeper for a next retreat and then signed up for yoga teacher training? And how did that journey go into such a fast track for you?
Yeah, after the first retreat, I think a lot of people, when I describe to them that I go for vipassana retreats once every year,
Yeah.
as is prescribed by SN Goenka, and they're always so perplexed, like how could you subject yourself to such torture year after year like that?
Year
But
after
then
year.
after the first one, it doesn't feel like torture anymore.
Yes.
Actually, you know.
It's in the closer sense what I call a holy day. It's my annual leave to get out of this hyperactive world and not take a holiday, just take it easy. But as the root of the English term, a holy day. So my holy days, a sacred period where I don't externalize and get lost in the hyperactivity, but where I withdraw, internalization, and try to find the wisdom within, open to that depth in the heart. Wonderful.
Yes. So yes, as I'm going through retreat after retreat, and I just felt, oh, I think I heard from someone. If you do yoga, your physical practice going to help your mental practice as well. Everything come together so beautifully. At the same time, while I was in India, I also learned a few other things besides just vipassana. And so then the whole idea of the energy centers, the chakras, rising of the kundalini shakti, as well as all the major nadis, the energy channels.
Yes.
The idea that if you really purify your energy body, then it's almost like you're having like a Tesla to drive your way to enlightenment. Which of course, if you really wanted to, you could walk there. But why walk when you could like take a really fancy car?
A smooth ride.
Exactly.
Hopefully.
And so that really convinced me that
Sure.
the small things that I also picked up along the way to then eventually going for my 10-day retreat, I should also pay attention to. The cleansing of the body, the whole tradition of hatha yoga.
The purification, which is in many ways at the root of classical traditional hatha yoga.
Yes.
Purification is actually in many ways the name of the game. Super important to purify the physical body, but also to cleanse the energetic channels, those meridians, these nadis that you mentioned, to prepare for the opening of the chakras and that fundamental life force of kundalini rising up along the spine, the ideal of hatha yoga and kundalini yoga.
Yes.
So you somehow got curious about that and wanted to investigate deeper, make your journey more smooth.
Yes.
In a way, systematic, as the Singaporean approach would be. Okay, how can I build myself a Tesla to fast track, to supercharge my journey towards spiritual awakening?
So then the first few classes I did, one was some random public class. I think I was in America at that point of time.
Okay.
I had an American public class. Of course, I struggled with it because I was super inflexible. And then back then, I think among the circle of friends I was in, something popular was Bikram yoga, which is the hot yoga, about 26, 27. And no judgment to Mr. Bikram, sir. But I found that it wasn't really for me as well, because this temperature, right? It's not something that I would really like myself. Although I can see how it's nice in winter time. Like if you're in winter and then you would go to a hot yoga class.
In Scandinavia, you have a hot yoga class to warm up. Sure.
So I come from Singapore, where everything is hot yoga anyway.
Already hot.
And
you rather need AC to cool it down a bit.
Then ironically in Singapore, then hot yoga is actually super popular. So you go from a 37-degree external place to a 37-degree heated room inside, and then you practice your hot yoga. Isn't that Singapore? I do know that there are some benefits to it, I'm sure. If not, why would it be prescribed, and why is it so successful? But I just think it's not for me. So as I go through those, and then eventually, again, I think it's through grace that I start to hear about this particular yoga school in Thailand. And so as I go there and I start to explore then level after level of the practice, that's where I met you and I met Kirsten.
And from nothing, you directly decided to sign up for a teacher training. I never asked you how you felt that call. Did you sign up because you wanted to become a teacher, or did you sign up initially with the intention of just deepening your own practice? It's an intensive course. Because actually, our experience over the last 1.5 decades of facilitating those teacher trainings is that half of the people actually sign up without even wanting to become a teacher. They just want to have a deep experience for themselves, an intensive course to explore the roots. What was your motivation? Did you want to become a teacher from the beginning, or just for your own journey, cleansing, purifying, learning more?
Well, if left to my own devices, then I would just want to take a teacher training because I just wanted to learn more. That's it.
For yourself.
But actually, it was a totally different context, actually.
Okay.
So the different context was, years after I met you and Kirsten.
Yeah.
And I had a partner. I still have her now, which is Pamela. Hello. my wife. And my business partner, the one that keeps the business together.
Sitting here behind the scenes and making it all happen.
Yes, the unseen one. But then the one that is always pushing me past my comfort zone. So at that point of time, she's saying, because all I did was to try to show her a few other things that you and Kirsten taught me.
I remember because she was there with you in Thailand when
Yes.
you were taking the 1-month intensive yoga teacher training. She was with you. I remember she was doing some painting, some photography, and so on behind the scenes, sneaking sometimes in, being curious what's happening here. And then, of course, she asked you, "What are you doing? What are you learning? Share something with me."
No, that was before. Before
already.
Before we
Okay.
even started, before I even decided to go for teacher training.
She asked you then. Already.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
So this, and then I was in Koh Phangan. I took
Yes.
some classes in that school, and I was learning from, and then you and Kirsten, and getting really inspired by both of you, by the way.
Sure.
And then I come back to Singapore, and I'm just living my life, moving forwards. And
Okay.
then I meet my wife, Pamela.
Okay. Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And then
understand.
she's, I think she was asking, could you teach me a few things, what you learned in that school? So I'm trying to teach. But then apparently she felt that it was really important that I would then become a yoga teacher because she felt that I had some qualities in me that were really conducive to then step into the role of a yoga teacher, which I, of course, totally disagreed. Right? Because
Exactly.
I just felt that I'm a super introverted person, and really shy, and the last thing that I would ever want to do is to be in front of a group of people. And I'm the most comfortable if I'm at the last, the end of the class in the corner.
Last row.
And
hiding.
then, just listening. And then I don't even have any questions to ask. I'm just listening. And, if cold day in very dark place, the day that I would actually raise my hand and ask a question in class, I would just prefer to just listen. So that's me. So that's not some yoga teacher, right? A yoga teacher, at least in my opinion at the point of time, one is female, right? Because in Singapore,
Sure.
almost every yoga teacher, actually every yoga practitioner is literally female.
Yeah, like 94% or
Yeah.
like
One, female. I'm not a female. Two, extroverted, not extroverted. Three, loud. I'm really quiet. And then four, sociable, connected network of friends and stuff like that. Then you have your group of students. No network of friends, no students. Just me and my wife. That's my existence, really. So the last thing that I would ever think about was to actually be a yoga teacher. But then my wife, Pamela, and she's moving forward and telling me, you should be one, go be a yoga teacher. So I have
again,
really...
you didn't have a choice. We had that theme before.
I did. I had a choice. So yes, I'm really grateful then for, the push from my wife, Pamela. And then without her, really, I would probably not have the inclination to do so. But at the same time, I'm also grateful to myself.
Of course.
That have decided to just, agree to take one big step forward and then just to see what happens. Even though I can't see the ground in front of me, I just decide to just take one step forward. So I should pat myself on the back as well.
Definitely.
Yes. And but then, of course, thank you so much to my wife, Pamela, for giving me that suggestion. Yeah. And that's it. Then before I know it, I'm looking around for a teacher training course. But then one of my old friends says, "Hey, do you know Burkhard and Kirsten has their new school come up, Akarsha Yoga Academy, and they're doing yoga teacher training." And then the moment I heard that, I signed up.
Immediately.
Yes.
You felt it.
Yes.
And we were just getting started back then. We founded the yoga school some 12 years ago. We just
Yes.
had our anniversary yesterday, actually celebrated here. And it must have been probably our second or third course only. I think it was a small group of 12 participants. I still remember some of the people, April and others, who were with us in this jungle retreat center. Not as simple as Indian circumstances, but it was a pretty humble, simple nature place. I remember sometimes the tropical rainstorms were blowing in through the mosquito nets of the hall, and we were like hiding, trying to keep the pillows dry in the very exposed nature space there.
There was a huge hill,
Super
really
steep up on the mountain with amazing views of the ocean. And exactly, you were living, actually, you had this amazing ocean view bungalow, I remember.
at the bottom of the hill.
Yeah. Mid halfway up. I
Oh, yeah.
remember. Wow.
And I was too scared to take the scooter up, so I walked.
Yeah, because it's so steep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a wonderful small island in Thailand where yogic communities are going very strong, and there's an atmosphere of practice, of dedication to the intensified practice. So that was so inspiring for us also back then, that there were so many people around who were like dedicated not just to 2-3 hours of practice per day, but like 4 hours, 5-6 hours every day practicing in their little beach hut. Very affordable, everything. Very simple life circumstances, purity, the beauty of nature, and people going all in on their yoga practice, on their spiritual journey. Monasteries, retreat centers. I remember I did my first own 10-day silent meditation retreat also there on the island, and ended up with dozens and dozens of those silent retreats. So much inspiration in that early days where we were just so committed together on the practice.
Yeah.
But then we got to remind what I mentioned initially, that still you were at that stage of just touching your shins in your forward fold. That was kind of the range. But
You
then
know what? I
was-
regret actually taking photo. I'm not taking photo of myself not being able to touch my toes, because now I'm in a situation where a bunch of people feel that they don't feel that practice is for them because they can't touch their toes. And I'm telling them, when I started, I couldn't touch my toes as well. No one would believe me.
No one would believe you, because he's like the most amazing Cirque du Soleil asana
No.
practitioner you can imagine. He's like just finally getting from the two-handed handstand towards the one-handed handstand. This is kind of
Oh,
like the
that's
level, like this is the level we're talking. Like the most amazing arm balances and acrobatic intensity, but not just for the last 1-2 years. But I remember like soon after graduating from our teacher training, not long after, I see some posts, some social media from you. It's like, is this the same guy? How is it possible? It's only possible because of the intensity of dedication, of practice, which is in some ways in that community, as mentioned, was very common. In the Vipassana meditation retreat that you did, in that community, very common and widespread. And you had done a few of those retreats before coming to the yoga teacher training. But it is also a feature of the Singaporean way of being. This just incredible, like unbelievable clarity and commitment to just be so straight, so dedicated. It's completely out of this world. I feel like it's like India is out of this world. Incredible India. Like you can travel the world and you think you know every country, and then you come to India. It's a kind of completely different continent and realm. But also Singapore, in a way, on the other end of the spectrum, we cannot say, but differently. But it's also so out of this world, the Singaporean way of being. So I always attribute at least 30% of your evolution into a master yogi to the Singaporean mindset, but give us some hope for the non-Singaporean humble beings on this planet. How can we go deeper in our practice and become only a 11% version of the master yogi that you are? give us some hope. How is it possible?
Okay, being a Singaporean, I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about.
Because it's normal, because you only know the Singaporean style. No, you know much more.
I think I know what you're talking about. Like when I'm in your course, I remember we talked about it, that I was the only one sitting up straight and everyone was like reclining.
Exactly. People chilling like after, it's like 12-hour days in such an intensive course, and like 5, 6 1-hour lectures per day, and people are just like, oh my god, it's so hot, and they're just chilling out. They just cannot cope anymore. And the Singaporean master student would be like, you don't lie down in a spiritual lecture. Like, of course, you're just like on and committed. So exactly that straightness, that spine, literally, having a spine,
Yeah.
standing up for the righteousness on this planet.
And I remember inviting you for a meditation workshop to one of to my school, yeah, and that you were so surprised that everyone was sitting like me.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they're all like this. It's like- and of course, the Asian culture also, which generally also is in Southeast Asia, very common. The respect for the elders, parents, grandparents, and the teachers.
Teachers. Yes.
That is so deeply ingrained in the Asian culture.
Yes.
This respect for the wisdom traditions.
Mm-hmm.
So, still, for the non-Singaporean, down-to-earth
Mm.
beings on this planet, how can we find ways to commit to our practice? Because the principle is do the practice and get the benefits.
Mm.
If we just talk about it, we're basically not going anywhere. So how to practice what we teach, how to walk the talk, how to commit to the practice and have that integrity, that what we call in yoga the tapas, the commitment, the discipline, the dedication to actually go on the mat, on the pillow, and as one of our teachers would say, and get the job done, to in a selfless, peaceful, harmonious way go deeper into the practice. What is your secret?
Mm.
I'm
That's
genuinely
actually
curious about that.
something a lot of people ask as well. How do they get consistent?
Yeah.
Of course, I don't have to come up with anything. I just go back to then what I was taught from the Buddhist tradition, the
Mhm.
idea of a triple gem,
Yeah.
of taking refuge in 3 really big ideas, is also actually found in Sanatana Dharma, or then Yoga Darshana.
Yeah.
Also talk about taking refuge in one, the idea of the ultimate objective, which is enlightenment, or if you would say Buddha. And then secondly, taking refuge in, of course, the Dharma or the Dharmic principles, or then the truth of the teaching.
The teachings.
And then 3, also extremely important, you just mentioned it earlier, that if you get surrounded by people that are all just burning the same way and thinking about the same things, revolving around the same common objective, then things become so supportive for you.
The community, what is called in
Sangha.
Asia, the Sangha.
Yes. So Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. 3 things that can help then to support you. And even in those days that you don't feel very supported or don't feel very motivated. It's the same way. Like, for example, you go to a gym, you have a gym buddy.
Yeah.
Right? You have an accountability partner.
There we go.
That is Sangha.
So, yeah,
That is,
it's true. I
that's
never
pretty
saw it like this. A gym buddy and accountability partner is your Sangha.
Yes.
So it's true. Small footnote on that. The Theravada Buddhist monks in Southeast Asia,
Yes.
they do these extreme rainy season retreats, and they're sometimes like wandering ascetics. In India, these wandering ascetics go alone. The Buddhist monks actually never go alone.
Mm.
Not never, but like the common standard, especially for the more beginners, novice monks, is a standard that they always couple up, because there's something in this kind of mutual commitment,
Yes.
that integrity, which we nowadays call a gym buddy or accountability partner. I never saw that parallel. I love it.
Mhm.
Continue, please.
So then here's the secret, because for me, when I came back to Singapore, I struggled to find a Sangha or a group of like-minded people the way I found in Thailand or in India.
Yeah.
And again, it's not that I'm really friendly with everyone and like really intimate with everyone, like literally like a part of the society, but it's just that literally I was surrounded by this. So me being very introverted and everything would probably not interact with everyone, but just the whole feeling of someone next to you practicing so hard is all that is needed to really keep you focused, really. And so in Singapore, I don't have that. Although there is, yoga is a very big thing in Singapore, but it's a little bit more of an athletic endeavor, a little bit less on the spiritual side of things,
Yes.
if you would say. Then here's the secret. I decided to maybe start my own sangha, right? So that is one of the very big motivations
Love it.
from then starting a yoga school in Singapore, which is the Nithya Priyan School of Yoga. And so
Start your own sangha. If there is no
Yes.
sangha, then you start your own community. Awesome. And you be the light, you be in the center and inspire other people, and then they inspire you. And then, of course, with the integrity, you need to show up for them, and you cannot let them down. So it's in a way, it's one of the interesting things of the teacher role that it kind of puts you on the spot. I remember when starting to teach, there's some intuitive commitment that we just want to be, of course, prepared. It's like when you give a presentation in front of a group of people, of course, you want to kind of know what you're talking about to not make a fool out of yourself. So in this way, the role and responsibility of the teacher automatically puts you on a fast track.
Yeah.
Because you just need to show up, and especially if you're Singaporean or if you have increased levels of integrity, then of course you want to show up as the best version of yourself. You want to be perfectly prepared. Sometimes we then get a bit over paranoid and defensive and obsessed with over preparing. Okay, we relax a bit into that, but still we want to not show off, but still show up in a responsible way. We want to guide people appropriately, of course. They take their time, they even pay money to show up. Then, of course, I want to share something valuable with them, and I got to be in a good condition. And then, how am I in a good condition as a yoga teacher? Of course, I need to practice.
Yes. So yeah, that's pretty much it. You nailed on the head there. Maybe one thing to add: this whole idea of the teacher-student relationship.
Yes.
It's a really big thing in the yoga tradition.
Yes.
So one thing that I really kept to heart, and as you say, it's easier from where I come from because we have a history of that.
Yeah. Respect for the teacher.
We call you Lao Shi, right?
Say again.
Lao Shi. That's the
Lao
Chinese
Shi.
name for teacher, which simply translates to old master.
Oh, the master.
So it is totally inappropriate for you because you are so young.
Oh, the master.
But that level of respect for the teacher, which is always seen as a person with the experience to share. And then, of course, the guru sishya parampara, or the student teacher lineage, is one way in which we ensure, of course, the unbroken line of teaching. But at the same time, the guru sishya parampara is also understood maybe horizontally, not just vertically. Vertical is like if you are a student and you have a teacher above you, and then you pass the teaching downwards. But then horizontally, the idea that we are also expected to understand that we are as much a teacher as we are a student. That as we teach, so too we need to learn. As we give, so too we need to receive. And so one very common question I have when people are a little bit hesitant to join a teacher training course, for example, what if I don't want to be a yoga teacher? What if I just want to learn? So then I say, well, if you're going to go for my teacher training course, of course, it's very valid, and because it's such an intensive course and it's going to provide you so much more information than if you would just go for a public class, you are definitely going to learn more. But there is only one requirement. One thing that you have to do if you come for my yoga teacher training course, that you must learn to teach. Because, like, for example, in the education circle, and we have this term there, or they have this term there, called project-based learning or problem-based learning.
Hands-on, applied.
That if I'm just here giving you a lecture, blah, 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 yoga is this, yoga is that, and you sit down and you just write notes, yeah, you can have X amount of learning. But now suddenly I tell you, okay, now do a yoga class. And so suddenly you have to now bring everything you learned together and you have to overcome something. And another example is like maybe when you were a student, when you were a young child, and one of your classmates maybe didn't attend class and now starts to ask you, what happened in class? What happened in class? Right? You might have an X amount of knowledge, but then the moment you start to share that knowledge with another person, then very magically somehow you deepen your own understanding. You deepen your own learning.
That's actually something I learned when I studied education and psychology in university in Berlin. I teach, I learn. While teaching, I learn. And it's similar what I was just describing, that we want to be not only the best version of ourselves, but of course, it's even a famous Einstein quote. It's a real Einstein quote. If you cannot explain it simple, you don't understand it well enough. So being able to really comprehend deeply, not just theoretically, but experientially, practically, kind of piercing through, permeating the subject matter, really knowing it from own first-hand experience deeply, then I understand it well enough, and then I can explain it in simple terms, break it down, make it relatable to people. So that's another invitation for us to go deeper into our own practice and experience, and then to share genuinely. That it's not just a lip service, but that we are actually, again, practicing what we teach.
Yeah, so that's what I consider to be the horizontal guru sishya
Yes,
parampara.
wonderful.
That you are giving and then you are receiving and you are receiving and you are giving. You teach what you learn what you teach. Like
Yeah.
this, you really help. Even the times when
Full
I'm not
circle.
really, even the times now when I'm not really expected to then teach something that I'm learning, at the back of my head, I'm just thinking, okay, how am I going, as you say, make this information more succinct, more understandable. And then now it's always going automatically, every time I try to get some information in.
Sure.
And then the notes that I take nowadays as well, the whole idea of then how does it belong to an overall structure, overall
Sure.
curriculum,
Sure.
even though
Sure.
then
The mind already is on the job to structure it.
yes, and it's all like adding so much to and deepening the understanding just by embracing that you're not just an accumulator, you're not just a hoarder of information, but you're also responsible for transmitting it to the next person. And then like that, you sort of create this really magical electrical circuit. Without that, the electricity doesn't flow. But if the electricity flows, from one to the other, then you have this light bulb, right?
Exactly. There's some magic in the sharing,
Yeah.
in the mutual exploration, in the exposing of the subject together, in that shared investigation, that mutual, in a way, research. I like it in the Ashtanga tradition, they regularly call it the Research Institute, what we call the living tradition. It's
Yeah.
not a fixed, final, static, the yoga tradition, this is how it's written in stone and static. No, it's a living, dynamic equilibrium where, first of all, individually, of course, we rediscover in our own experience. But then also in the community, in the sangha, together we investigate and explore, and then we see what is relevant for the students, what works, what not, what is completely unrelatable. So I was, for example, concerned when I was teaching this meditation workshop in your studio. Before I was coming, I was like, I know they're like Singaporean career people, and they're like from a subculture in a very different mindset than my yogic hippie lifestyle from this small island, barefoot, 6 hours of practice per day and endless meditation retreats. How am I going to make it relatable? How am I going to break that down? How can it at all communicate? Will it at all match? Will it be interesting for them? So we, in a way, need to put ourselves into the shoes of the participants to also pick them up where they are, make it relevant and relatable to them. And it doesn't need to be in a yoga studio or workshop. It can be, the colleagues at work, the family members, the friends, the neighbors, somebody struggling with something, and like your wife might be asking for support. Well, I have this stiff neck. I struggle with my shoulders being so tight, my mouse arm. What can I do? And then it's like, I learned all about yogic philosophy and vipasana, Buddhist insight meditation. But how am I going to help you now with your little struggle of this or that? But it's not a little struggle; it's big because it's very relevant for that being in that moment. So I'm not coming like belittling them, no, but really having compassion and seeing it with gratitude as an invitation for me to make it relatable, applicable, to hone my skills of communication. For you, you said you're an introvert by nature. You don't like to speak at all. but now you're in the spot to somehow share that with other people. So then you develop your skill by explaining your wife how to deal and how to do shoulder or neck rolls or something. So you learn to speak up, and then you
Yeah,
develop that skill more, and then you're serious and committed, and then fast track.
that's pretty much it.
Share a few more insights of starting to teach your own first classes, and then with that fast track, you had the help of your wonderful wife, but still, how did the both of you manage to build that yoga school and that community so quickly? Obviously, with lots of obstacles, as we can only imagine, the expensive rent, making uh, the payroll, the bills, some assistant, welcoming. There's so many things to do. The cleaning person needs to be paid. No, you clean yourself. How do you handle your time, your practice? Continue your own practice, care for the students, the logistics of teaching classes. How did you make it possible? It can be very challenging.
Yeah, it is.
It is, yeah. But still, you succeeded so strongly. So, what's your secret to be such a heroic practitioner and teacher and husband at the same time? I wonder. It's for me incredible how you pull that together on a daily basis for like your school. You must have also like your anniversary coming up soon. Like we're talking like 8th anniversary, almost a decade also.
We are 6 years old.
6. It feels like a decade, but
Yeah.
how? But you started teaching also before. So how did you move from showing your wife how to relax her shoulders
Hmm.
to starting to teach classes and then so soon open your school?
Hmm.
What's your secret to manifest it as a new career? Because this is where we were coming from. You said your old career didn't make any sense anymore.
Yeah.
And now you are like one of the most successful yogi entrepreneurs of Singapore, which is such a competitive place.
I'm not sure I can accept all those comments or all those compliments that you just given me, but thank you so much for them. But okay, from being a introvert to a yoga teacher, through the yoga teacher training, but then I come back and there was a small period of time where I was still a little bit hungover in my old self. But that was a hilarious time where I would like, for example, now I want to conduct classes, I need students. Because I need students, I need to market. I need to really put the word out there about my classes. And so I start to do so in a very secretive way, right? So here I'm trying to use Facebook as my place of marketing. And I find that I make an ad, I find a venue to then conduct the yoga class. I find that one, I'm not secure enough to even charge for my class, so I make it free of charge. 2, I'm not even open enough to then really broadcast the class. So I'm like secretly handing out the flyer to 1 or 2 people only. And then I'm literally like curating the list. I have like 300-400 lists in my Facebook friends at that point of time.
Uh-huh.
I end up only giving like maybe 40 or 50 people.
Didn't want to invite, I don't want to kind of ask that person to invite to come to my class. I'm a bit shy.
Yeah, this happened for like I think 1 or 2 months until I finally, opened my eyes to it and realized, oh, what a monkey mind, right? Like you're in the market, you're trying to sell a product, but then you go to the darkest part of the market and then you whisper your product to someone as if you're selling narcotics or something like that. Then how many people do you expect to then conduct classes with? And so after 1 or 2 months of just conducting classes to 1 or 2 people, I just realized I'm not being effective. I just have to get out of myself that way. And so that was when I finally had the confidence to then put a resume together and then finally approach a big yoga studio.
Wow.
At that time to then get a job as a yoga teacher. So then that was like this really intensive period that followed. That was when full-time as a yoga teacher. That full-time means you conduct like 4 classes a day, 6 days, 24 classes a week.
Wow.
Yes.
This is again the Singaporean style.
Half of which is hot yoga classes, which I dislike. And that intensive period was really a learning experience for me, actually, because 2 things, of course, can happen. One, you get really bored and really burnt out or get really tired. But 2, you find this source within you that keeps you going and then really starts to, things get really, it gets really ignited, by then that same thing. The same thing that can burn you out can actually move you to new places. Just actually doing that part of that point of time in my intensive teaching period, and that lasted, I think, 2-3 years. Working for someone that then gradually, even if I was working for someone, back then in Singapore, yoga studios have their teachers conduct classes randomly. There were no objectives to then the classes they conduct. But then that was contrasting my experience in Thailand, in Koh Phangan, where I remember that I was going to one level of training, another level of training, that I was, focusing on this pose and then that pose. And then every week or every month, perhaps, I had something to look forward to, and I would add in a very step-by-step way my deepening of my practice.
Okay.
And so during that intensive...
curating the classes instead of just random drop-in classes where there's kind of no real structure, just every day, every week, something happening, no educational ingredients, just, okay, do some exercise. You turn it around. You noticed maybe even a gap, a niche in the market that nobody else was really offering some education, some systematic curriculum, some theming of classes, some progressive unfolding of the teachings. So you built that into your drop-in classes when you were working in that studio already? It became like a bit maybe your signature?
It became a little bit like my signature, yes.
Interesting.
And then every week the students would look forward to something new that I would explore with them. So initially, I even tried a little bit more of the esoteric practices, like Uddiyana Bandha.
The abdominal suction, a strong breathing exercise, a bit far out for beginners,
But eventually, as you say, we have to meet everyone where they are. So eventually, the structure that I started to present, the week-by-week progression, became a little bit more physical, asana-based.
Sure.
And then I would still have opportunities to go into the deeper practices when then we go into more intensive, my regular students would then get a little bit curious about what is more, and then they would find that then my workshops are available to them. And then that's where they can start to deepen. And then, of course, the culmination of their curiosity would be my 200-hour course, where all will be revealed, everything that I learned, all the essentials. And I don't hold back. I teach as much as I can. Yes, in the 200, and then of course the spillover will be in the 300 course, and so on and so forth. And then that's, because left to your own devices, what I noticed in Singapore is that the teachers will then just, gravitate towards their preferences. This teacher, really strong, will end up teaching arm balancing inversion to their students. So a student being regular with that teacher will have an imbalanced practice, physical-wise. Another teacher is super flexible, backbends, and will then teach backbends to their students all the time. So then students that follow that teacher will become again imbalanced in that sense. So it needs a little bit of when you are writing notes in a notebook, you need some horizontal lines. So you need a grid, right? So that you can have beautiful regular handwriting. But I just did not see that kind of structure being given to then students that go to these randomly conducted yoga classes. And so for me, initially I just thought really simply to just provide something new every week for people to look forward to. But eventually what it grew into was then a 27-week overall structure to the whole practice with an objective. So now it has an objective. The objective is to be comprehensive, right? In what we are exploring in the body.
Very interesting, very interesting. So you built in your yoga school, or first while you were still teaching in another studio? Or did you start
while I was still teaching in another studio?
Okay, even okay. No, and probably the studio owner didn't ask you to develop such a curriculum. Just out of your own inclination and calling, you wanted to offer something more. What you learned, what you received, what helped you and benefited. So while working in the other yoga studio, you developed a half-year curriculum of weekly unfolding, studying, systematic education that you. And then, of course, create continuity of your participants who are looking forward to come back, but not just as a hook, but as a meaningful way of sharing your inspiration. Wow. But in this way, then, of course, it makes sense because then you had your curriculum already ready while working in the yoga studio. And then it's, of course, comparatively easier to open your own place because the point is that it's a lot of work and effort needed to organize, run a venue from, finding a venue, renovating, designing a venue, making it into a yoga studio, and then all the daily stuff of the whole registration. And then suddenly, when you have your own studio, you cannot rely on the other studio boss to do the marketing, but then you're suddenly back with marketing, getting
Yeah.
students and so on, and all the other things. And the experience is that usually then you don't really have time to develop a curriculum then, because how can you do everything at the same time? Keep up your own practice, start a business, do marketing, venue, location, and have a life, and then teach the classes, not to forget. And then when you're going to do the research and develop your curriculum and all the content, it's unrealistic, more or less.
Yes.
So that's a strategically actually very smart move, to be self-driven, motivated to develop your own curriculum, your handwriting, your signature, your content already while being in another school. That's actually very interesting. And similar for us, it was unfolding like that. I agree with that approach. Makes a lot of sense to have that systematic educational self-discovery in your own journey when you learn and grow yourself in your own experience, intensified self-practice, and then developing that as a teaching so other people can benefit from it, but only then to open your own courses, school, workshops, etc., and stand on your own 2 feet. Very interesting progression. I never saw it so clearly. Amazing.
To be honest, I actually didn't think of starting a school back then. I just thought of just getting a job in the studio, really.
Sure.
And then within the job itself, within the role of me as a yoga teacher, just conducting my classes that way, really. But I think, again, my wife, thank you so much, Pamela. She's pointing out the idea that, here you are teaching a kind of an integrated way, but there all the other teachers are teaching their way. And so you're within a bigger context of a yoga studio that, there is a possibility here that every teacher is teaching the same thing in a more coordinated way. And you would even have even more benefits to your students that way, right? To have such an integrated environment. And so then, at least to her, the natural step would be then to, why don't you start your own yoga studio? Which, of course, I would say, what are you talking about? That's not me, right? So the same old Priyan, resisting again, but then the same old Priyan decided once again to then take a big step forward into area where he doesn't even see where the ground is, and to just surrender to it. And so that's how the school started, really. Big step forward like that. And then another big step forward, another big step. It's like a continuous series of walking on air, it feels like, you just have to have faith. And if you lose that faith, you stop walking, you fall, right? Yeah. You just take one step forward at a time, and it's surrender. It's a surrender.
Exactly.
Really.
And then if the trust and surrender are there, then life gets supportive. People start showing up, supporting, and are helping out. Life circumstances appear, the synchronicities, the right thing happening in the right moment. And again, just to find a somewhat affordable space in downtown Singapore, where there's no availability and prices are through the roof, where to even start, So we in many ways rely on the support, and frequently it can be then also students and family members who get supportive, who see the sincerity in the dedication and the benefits of the practices, and they benefited from something. You showed them something, it helped them so much, then they are open to help you out, give you a hand. Some word of mouth marketing, they spread the word, they bring their friends. That's what we rely on in the beginning a lot, of course. As you said, when you joined our teacher training in the beginning, it was one of your friends who told you did you hear that Burkhard and Kirsten are opening their Akasha Yoga Academy, offering teacher trainings? See, where did that come from? Word of mouth. And then you somehow brought some money from Singapore, which helped us to pay the bills, to rent the yoga hall. And I remember buy a mini projector, a tiny one that we can do a proper presentation in our hippie yoga hall.
Look at your equipment now.
And now we have $100,000 film studio standing here. So all just supported by all the people who are helping and are seeing the benefit, the value in those practices. And then life becomes supportive, and so many people start pitching in this way or another. Yeah.
Yes, which means I cannot really take any credit for any of this, because
Exactly.
despite our best efforts, I know for a fact that we really need to work on a lot of parts of our business where I am certainly not proficient in, being a businessman is not me, but it doesn't mean that I have to, not be a businessman. I have to rise up to it. Then I have to learn a lot of things. Marketing, for example, I'm one of the weakest, right? And I continue to learn, continue to grow in that aspect. And I know that when I started my studio to now, really, it wasn't because I had this really, $1 million marketing plan that is going to like drive so much traffic to my school or anything. But actually, what magically happened was, I think, mostly word of mouth.
Yeah.
So without, as you say, the support of these beautiful students that put so much trust and put so much faith in our school, and that started to even spread the word around to all their friends to bring them in, then we would not be where we are right now. Yes.
Which is in a way also, as you started the network, you mentioned that briefly, how you were reaching out to your Facebook friends. And in the beginning, shy, as you said, out of the 200 contacts you had, you only addressed 40, 50. But making use also, they would say, leaning in to the community instead of hiding. And so there's a certain trust and surrender needed. We somehow, life puts us on the spot to step up our game and turn around even personality characteristics like the introversion, the shyness, and then develop skills on marketing, networking, communication, practicalities, logistics, operation. We have friends and family members supporting, and then things can grow. And the community, as we said before, the sangha can flourish. This is where we were coming from. You felt the need for a community in Singapore. You didn't find it. And now you even started chanting mantras, doing bhajan and kirtan, playing harmonium. I remember when you joined our 300-hour advanced teacher training in Bali some 5 years ago before COVID, how you were asking like, how can I play the bhajan? There was another participant, I remember so well, who was sponsoring ukulele mini guitars
for the Tom, yes.
Exactly, for the entire community. He loved the music so much, and he wanted to also give back to the community. And then he went out to the shop and he bought the ukulele mini guitars for the whole teacher training that everybody could
started to give lessons.
Exactly. And then together in the breaks, people were practicing, starting to chant the mantras, the bhajan, kirtan chanting, and that also inspired you then to get serious. And now, in a way, I'm so inspired by your slow progression from the mainstream Singapore yoga studio, as you mentioned in the side sentence, tends to be very almost like I think you formulated an athletic endeavor. It's more a physically focused practice, as it is in most yoga studios around the world. And I was always wondering how you manage to bridge between your own profound spiritual roots and your Buddhist meditation practice and your commitment to the spiritual path, which is so strong, and your aspiration in that field, and how you, in a careful, I would almost say polite way, try to pick up the Singaporean, more physically focused athletic asana practitioners who come to you in this very innocent way of being mostly interested in the physical flexibility, health, how you very carefully, without scaring them away, because it's also culturally a thing, the Chinese, the Indian context, the different religious backgrounds, the reputation of yoga being a Hindu thing, it's a culturally sensitive topic in this melting pot of Singapore where people from all ethnicities and religious backgrounds come together. And then the more Indian Hindu influenced yoga tradition with mantra chanting, your Buddhist meditation background, they coming from a Chinese context frequently, either more secular or from their own cultural perspective, atheists, different walks of life, and how you somehow very slowly but surely more and more integrate the spiritual aspects into your school and into your community, and how you managed over the years and years of cultivating your reputation as a master asana practitioner, as a hero of the poses, to then somehow very slowly but surely, it's the wrong term, convert, but
Convert.
open the Singaporean atheist mainstream people, or from their different religious context, how you make them open and available to the wisdom which comes through those practices in a relatable and translatable way, where I'm so inspired. Where when I was teaching those workshops at your place, where I felt kind of like, I came too much extreme, like not relatable, too much of a hippie and kind of too far out for them. As we said before, picking the people up where they are. And I'm very impressed how you, with that soft perseverance, quietly, introvert as you are, coming kind of through the back door and opening people's hearts in such an inspiring way. It's such a joy to witness that. How, with the motto of your school, joy in the body, you bring that wisdom into motion, that intuitive depth which you cultivated in your own practice after 500 hours of teacher training, after a dozen silent meditation retreats, how you have a more and more stable ground to stand on to genuinely open not only the asana posture space for people, but slowly but surely open people to the spiritual depth. It's so deeply inspiring to me. I'm at awe and in reverence for
Oh,
that.
please don't be.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. So if you were to ask me that before I started teacher training, before I started to teach students, then I would say I don't really know what I'm doing. And all I'm doing is I'm just doing the way I feel is most appropriate way forward to do it. Then when I started to do teacher training, then the burden of responsibility for me to then teach other people how to conduct classes the way I conduct my classes to give the same effect. And then the effect is actually that, you would go for my class, at least if I were to believe all the reviews that I've been getting so far, that there is a kind of a, wow, this guy has a kind of a calming effect. I feel so grounded in his class, and that it's so different from the other classes, what is going on. And
We
I
only
think-
start believing these things and are still resisting when we read the testimonials after like 100 reviews and testimonials. Like, maybe there's some point. Like, we tend to deny and not accept this.
They
But
love to use the word Zen. Wow, this class was so Zen, right? You're not having the words to describe, but then reaching for those words. But I think I pretty much understand what you're trying to say. Essentially, the classes that I like to go to lead me to that experience myself, yes, in a very guided and a very nurtured way. But if you were to go to my class, you would find actually zero ohms, no ohms,
sure,
no Sanskrit.
sure.
Maybe I would use Sanskrit to describe the pose names, but I will always use then follow up with the English name of the
Of
poses.
course, makes sense.
No esoteric practices.
Sure.
In fact, everything pretty much almost cut and paste same to with all the other yoga studios, because I don't, I don't like to jar people with suddenly different practices. I don't do anything different, really. But just that if you go deeper into the practice, you'd find that actually you don't really need all these outside details, as long as you stay connected to the heart of yoga, right? The heart of the tradition. So I would have the same reviews given even when I would conduct like even the, we have a kind of a class in Singapore called the core class. That's where you are expected to be the most calisthenics with everyone, right? Then the most, almost like a kind of a gym trainer with like really loud, motivating voice to everyone.
So
But
like a core class would be like core strength workout type of, or
like, all right, everyone, now you're going to do 20 chaturangas without any up dogs or down dogs, right? You do push-ups basically. Or now you hold the boat pose, right? And then after that you do and then they're focusing on getting strong. Actually, a lot of people in Singapore join core classes because they want to lose weight. Right, so it's literally like this class. You really have to be really athletic, really calisthenics based. That's the expectation, and I would just fulfill everything. But in the end, people would still say that was the most peaceful core class I've ever attended, and I don't know whether to take that as a compliment or an insult. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, then when I started my teacher training, I then was really put into a situation where I just can't leave it as it is. I have to start to really consider the ways in which then my classes are conducted this way, so that it becomes reproducible, and so that the graduates are essentially also able to provide this experience moving forward. So that I would want as authentically as I can to transmit what I was given, really. So then I guess there are actually a few prescriptive things that you can possibly do. Like, for example, to this day, I would always start the class silently, if possible, with my eyes closed, a few moments, just to anchor and ground myself, so that I am trying my best to start the class with the correct pace. That I don't want to drag the drama of whatever life I had before the class was happening and, like dump it onto my students. That I would always want to start by first resetting myself. Then and only then I find that, it's the best possible place for me to conduct the class in a very grounded manner, right? So then as I'm going through the class, I'm consistently always trying to not do anything, actually, right? This idea that you are doing but not doing, that you have effort but you have no effort.
Yes,
It's a little bit hard to put into words, but as best as I can, essentially the heart of my 200-hour teacher training is to get my students into understanding how to be this personless person to then conduct or to conduct their lives, even not just their classes.
Yeah, now I'm beginning to understand more. Because this is in many ways a very down to earth, straightforward, simple, sober form of spirituality, which is this simple, clear, non-esoteric, non-fluffy approach of, like you described it, acting without acting. This selfless process unfolding through our body and mind, where we, as you many times described in our conversation, where we step out of the way and let life happen through us in this effortless manner. And this is so apparent in your own posture practice, where you make it, as all those masters, make it seem and appear so light, so easy. Then you even drew the motto of your school, the tagline, joy in the body. It seems so joyful, so light, how you go into these extreme poses. But what you learned in that process of cultivating these very challenging postures is to not injure yourself and keep the sanity, the clarity, and the lightness, the detachment,
Yes.
the selflessness in the practice, the service to support whatever is needed by your community, whatever your students are asking for, core classes, okay, let me get in shape for that. But in a light, joyful, transparent way,
Yeah.
let life flow through you. And this is in many ways the Buddhist attitude also, is this dropping the ego, of not showing off, of not being pretentious and inflated, but as your students describe you, as you mentioned, this Zen purity, as you said in the beginning of the class, where you drop, you let go, you detach from all the stories and worries which came up before, and you make yourself available, transparent, and like a vessel, like a channel through which life can flow through you, but in this very like non-esoteric, non-spooky, non-fluffy way, in this sober, clear, clean Singaporean kind of it's in a way like a opposite of your yoga school is the Indian temple, where it's like the full Monty of rituals and ceremonies and offerings and chantings and like the colorful form of Hindu religion, with all the decoration and all the rituals and the 6-armed deity statues and all the rest of it, which for the modern scientific materialistic Western mindset, and also for this more efficiency-oriented, utilitarian Singaporean mindset, depending on their cultural background, atheist or not, or other religion, can be, of course, scary. So even though you're opposite the Indian temple, literally on the other side of the road, no Om chanting at your place, still by now you have managed to adapt some Ganesha mantra chanting, and the students are still showing up. But it's a marvelous mixture how you bring this pure down to earth form of spirituality into the Singaporean world. It's still a miracle for me how you bridge between the worlds And this was one of the main takeaways, which I always mention when I speak about your yoga school, and how I opened also this long conversation, how your school is at the center of all those different religious places, temples, institutions, the Indian temple, the Muslim mosque, the Buddha Tooth Relic Temple, one of the most sacred Buddhist sites in Southeast Asia, the Christian Methodist Church. All of those places are literally like in a distance of like 50, 100, 200 meters. Like it's directly, your school is surrounded by those temples. And you are in a way having the neutral center in the middle, amidst those different religious, spiritual traditions. And now you even opened your second studio
in the middle of a shopping mall.
In the middle of a shopping mall, where you like go even more into it, like into like one of the consumer temples, which in some ways is like really atheist. It's like the most, no, like the temple of Western consumer society, the materialistic temple in a way. And now you go even straight into the middle of it. And he just told me how now they're bullying him into Christmas decoration, Halloween decoration. And so having now a yoga school in the middle of the consumer temple. This, I feel, is the perfect culmination of our long conversation. I'm truly thankful that we're in this journey together. I'm so much appreciating your dedication, what you bring to the modern yoga world, how you are cultivating the spirit of yoga in your community, how the wisdom in motion is flowing through your body, joy in the body as the motto of your community, which you embody so eloquently. And I'm, as mentioned, in awe and deep reverence to your dedication and your beautiful heart.
But I also wish to add that if it weren't for you and Kirsten and Devdas, always being an inspiration to me, then as well, none of this would happen as well. And so that's why, time after time, every time I go to Bali, actually, one of the reasons I come is so that I can visit. And it's very important to me to always stay connected with all three of you. And you let me know what else we can do to help each other. And
exactly.
I have constant gratitude. I have constant gratitude for what you have given me. And this gratitude is, of course, also my responsibility to hand on to the next person. Yes.
Exactly.
Because we have this phrase in Singapore, good things must share.
Exactly. They must be shared. There's almost an obligation to pass on all the benefits which we received from our teachers. And that is this parampara lineage from teacher to student, how it has been passed on and handed down via the generations, centuries, and millennia. The Buddhist practices which you were referring to, it's like 2,500 years old. The same practices being cultivated, and we keep them alive and pass them on in the most genuine and authentic way as we receive them from the teachers and the best masters which we could find in our path. And then, like you say, it's almost a responsibility that we feel that inner calling, that heartfelt obligation to pass it on and make it accessible and available far and wide. And I'm truly thankful that we're in this shared journey together. That was the spirit of yoga. We trust that we find ways to continue to flow with wisdom in motion. Thank you so much.
Thank
please
you so much, Burkhard.
Stay connected. Check out Nithya Priyan's yoga school in Singapore, and see you rather sooner than later on the inside. On.